2015 edition of the VolunteerMatch Solutions Best Practice Network webinar series. Today we are going to be talking about changing corporate perspectives, workplace volunteer programs. My name is Stephanie Hong and I am the engagement manager here at VolunteerMatch. I'm going to be facilitating the webinar today. And joining me is my colleague, Lauren Wagner. Good morning, everyone. He is the Senior Manager of Marketing Strategy. Lauren will be assisting me with Q&A today. Okay, so first things first, let's go through some housekeeping items. Pretty simple. We definitely love questions and we encourage them. And we have two ways for you to ask them. You can either type in your questions on the box on the right side of your screen, or you can submit via Twitter using hashtag VMBPN. We will be answering questions at the end of the presentation. And for the people that joined late or didn't or missed the slide, we will have a copy of the webinar and the slides after the event, so do not worry about that at all. Okay, so now on to the good stuff. The notion of corporate social responsibility is changing, and it's becoming an easier sell to do good, which is great. Today we will hear from Angela Parker and Chris Jarvis, co-founders of Realize Worth. Prior to launching Realize Worth in 2008 with Angela, Chris spent more than 2 decades working with nonprofits ranging from urban centers in North America to informal settlements in Africa. As for Angela, she spent more than 10 years addressing the challenge of building programs relevant to both the volunteer and the community being served. Their years of experience will lend to today's discussion of trends and challenges they're seeing in corporate volunteerism, recommendations on how to inspire employees to volunteer, and the corporation's role in a higher calling. They are also authors in our newly released book, Volunteer Engagement 2.0, which we are all very, very excited about. And today's webinar is a highlight on their chapter, Partnering with Workplace Volunteer Programs. So without further ado, I am going to pass it on to our panelists. And yeah, let's get this going.
Perfect, thank you. All right, I'm going to switch over to my slides here. And Chris, if you just want to give us an intro.
Yeah, great to be with everybody. We may have met before, so sorry if we're going to cover some ground here again, but if we've not met and you're wondering who in the world are Angela and Chris, the firm we work with is Realize Worth. We work with companies on their employee volunteering program, and typically we want to answer the question, why, right? Why would employees participate in a giving or volunteering program when they have lots of options out there in their own personal time, doing their own thing on another website or whatnot? How do you get them to be involved? So that's what we're about. How do you involve employees in these programs to create some real impact for the community, the company, and the employee themselves? And just to give you some context, the companies we work with now, they tend to be larger with the global workforce. So companies like Apple, AT&T, Walmart, those are the kinds of companies that we work with, and we're thrilled to be able to share some of our learnings and examples from that work today. Happy to be with you, everybody.
Brilliant. So what we're going to cover today, go over just a couple things here, and just a quick question, Chris, can you see the side panel over my PowerPoint, or can you just see the PowerPoint?
I can see my side panel over the PowerPoint, so I'm not much help to you, sorry.
Okay, I think we're good. All right. I just wanted to make sure everybody can see my full screen. So we're going to go over a couple, a couple things that are in the chapter. So we'll give some highlights, and I do recommend you go there for more of this information. We're also going to offer some resources today that if anybody wants more of, following the call, just reach out and we'll be happy to send you studies and research and all kinds of stuff that we just have sitting around over here. So we'll cover workplace giving and volunteering trends and challenges, just a couple, in fact, the top 3 today. And then inspiring employees to volunteer, how do you do that? How do you give them a chance to get involved in a way that's meaningful to them? And then finally, we want to close with why what we do matters, because as you know, it's easy to lose sight of that. And when I say what we do, I mean all of us in this field, all of the CSR practitioners out there, and nonprofit workers as well. So let's dive in. I did want to ask, I know we're all on mute and we need to use the chat screen to interact. So if you want to put any questions in there before we start, but also please feel free to interact there throughout the call. I love knowing people are doing that, talking to each other, asking questions. If we don't get to any on the call today, we'll be sure to follow up with you.
Perfect. Okay, sorry, I was fumbling for my mute button. Sorry, Angela. It's the first time I've ever done a webinar. So So, why do companies volunteer? Why do companies mobilize their employees to get involved in the community? Because at the beginning, of things, the corporation, you can trace it back historically, back to Roman era, right? The idea of a corporation. But it really got speed in the Industrial Revolution, when the idea of making a lot of widgets and then making profit from those widgets began to become more systematized. And that's evolved in progressively. But the idea of the corporation itself was primarily to make widgets or product and profit. It's about product and profit. So getting this idea of social return or making a contribution to society or community impact, this particular structure was never designed to facilitate that. It just wasn't. So forcing companies or the corporation to do this kind of thing is a bit like putting a square peg in a round hole. It's not easy. It's awkward. So if it is so difficult, and if this is not the point of the corporation in the first place, the question is, why do it? Why employee or corporate volunteering in the first place?
We love hearing this question from our families when we tell them what we do. And they say, why would companies volunteer? And of course, if we're in the field, we know that there are a lot of reasons that are becoming more and more known. The research is proving that there are retention benefits, recruitment benefits, and so on. But the big one, the overarching category, is employee engagement. So if you Google realized worth, employee engagement, and Corey Diamond is the author of an article that has been posted on our site just recently about the looming employee engagement crisis. So if you look at these stats here on your screen, you'll see that it's like a little depressing, the employee engagement issue. But what we'd like to see this as today, the fact that so many organizations are looking for better ways to engage their employees, we're going to see that as an opportunity, because volunteering produces engagement. And if you go to that same article, you'll see some stats like this. 87% of employees who volunteered with their companies reported an improved perception of their employer. And you'll see another stat there. This is exciting information where we're learning to measure more effectively the benefits of volunteering on the business of an organization. Not just that people are happier, which of course does produce better work, we're finding, but also that those benefits benefit the bottom line. The companies are making more money because of employees volunteering. Another bit of information you'll find in that article: when companies act pro-socially, that just means enabling their employees to do good, employees view themselves in a positive light. Chris, how would you describe that?
Yeah, so this is an interesting dynamic, and we first want to admit a couple things. One, you've probably, if you're involved with employee volunteering at all, you probably have seen some of these stats or other stats. This field is getting better. We're going to talk about a project that we're involved in terms of generating better data in a few minutes here. But one of the more interesting ones recently was done by the Corporate Executive Board company, a $1 billion membership-driven consultancy that is global. They have almost all of the big companies in the Fortune 500, the FTSE, and I think it's called Asian Tiger Index. Anyways, they went across all of these, and they did it in conjunction with Points of Light, part of it anyways. They wanted to understand what is the financial benefit of employee volunteering. The number they came back with only looking at 2 indicators, just 2. One was productivity, and the other one was, wait, I know this because I'm making this point, retainment. So they looked at what are the costs of these things, and then they compared people who volunteer with people who don't volunteer. And the number they came up with $2,400. So for every employee who volunteers at your company, you can tell your CFO, just add $2,400 to the bottom line. That person will contribute $2,400 in value to the bottom line in these 2 areas. Okay, we think it's probably higher, and we're going to, again, I mentioned that measurement project a little bit later, but we think it's probably higher, and that's an important number to get at. But some of this is intangible too, and the reason you can get to things like productivity is because of what Angela was just talking about here. Employees view themselves in a positive light. So let me explain how that happens, and then we'll continue to talk about why it matters. So let's say Angela. Angela, when she went to, you're not going to believe this, but when she went to high school and then college, she was a bit of a wallflower. you know, she kept to herself. When she was little and they played dodgeball, everybody wanted to throw the ball at her. It's terrible. She's still traumatized by it, right, Angela? So she learned very early on, you keep your head down, you keep quiet, and nobody will notice you. Just disappear. Right? So she starts to work for this company, and let's say she goes to work for VolunteerMatch. VolunteerMatch is a very positive company, an enthusiastic staff, a great culture, and she gets the job there, and in the first few months she's there, VolunteerMatch has a crisis. And they pull everybody into the room and they say, listen, we've got a crisis. If we don't resolve it in 30 days, we're going to have to close. And so we're going to stay here all weekend. I'm ordering pizza. Nobody goes home until we get an answer to this crisis. We're going to put it on our CEO's desk on Monday. But if we can't do that, we're all out of a job. So here we go. So there's 20 people in the room to go around. And Angela is practicing what she's learned. Just keep your head down and just keep, you know, let it go. So it comes to Angela, and the team lead says, look, Angela, everybody contributes here. She's like, I know, I don't have anything to say. Angela, just any idea. So she blurts out the idea, and the entire room goes quiet. This is the best idea we've ever had, right? Of course, Angela's nodding her head like this. Yeah, of course. They write it down, but at this time in her life, she's shocked that they would even think that. So they write it down, they implement it, get it on the CEO's desk, company's safe. Okay, perfect. She's driving home. She's going through a process called Sensemaking. She's reviewing the experience and trying to bring meaning to the experience. It's very important. She's bringing meaning to the experience by reviewing it in her mind. And she'll even talk to her mom about it or other people about it. She just rehearses some of the stuff. What did that mean? Because at first she's thinking, that's crazy. That never happens. 2 months later, VolunteerMatch is in crisis again. VolunteerMatch is not in crisis all the time, by the way. I just want to say that. But let's say, for the sake of this story, that they are again. Angela's in the room. Same thing. She's like, lightning is not going to strike twice. Pass. No, Angela, we all need to share. So she's like, okay, well, what if we did this? Blurts it out. That is the best idea we've ever heard. Same thing again. Implement it. Company safe. So after 6 months of this, guess what happens in terms of Angela's behavior? She's walking down the hall. She passes the team lead. And what does she do? Does she hide her head? Does she hope she's ignored, like she's invisible, like she was in college and high school? No. She stops the team lead and she says, you know, I've been thinking about the way we do blah, blah, blah. And I think if we just tweak this, this, and this, we could get ahead of an issue that I see on the horizon. Great, Angela. I'll put that on the stack of ideas that you've given me over the past month, because now she's very proactive. So what has happened? What's happened is that VolunteerMatch, the team lead there, created space for Angela to live into a version of herself that she had not believed possible before. And so she begins to see herself that way and live out of that idea of who she is. And if you think about the best bosses you've ever had in your life, who are they? They're the people who gave you the space to be the best version of yourself. Were they actually the best boss you ever had? I don't know. I think of mine. I know it's Marlene at this men's clothing store in Toronto, and it was a long time ago. Was she the best boss? I have no idea. But to me, she's the best person I ever worked for, because the way she called greatness or the best version out of me was phenomenal, and I loved it. So two things happen. When we give people the opportunity to get out there in the community and volunteer and do something good, make a difference, and afterwards they're driving home and they think, wow, I did something and it mattered. I made a contribution. That's weird. I've never done that before. Most Americans don't volunteer, for example. And then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. Something happens in terms of how I view myself, and it generates what you see on the slide here, called effective commitment. It's a way of seeing myself, and it's a bond that is able to be created between me and the person who gives me the opportunity to see myself as a good person, because the human mind doesn't differentiate between living into that version and then the people who gave me, or the organization that gives me the opportunity to live into that version. That's why I think Marlene is the best boss.
And if you've been in any kind of long-term relationship, you know that there are different types of commitment, right? In fact, if you go to our blog again, there's a short blog I wrote about the 3 types of commitment. And this is enormously important when we're speaking about the business benefits of volunteering to an organization. So 3 types. 1 is normative commitment. This is if your dad ever said to you, yeah, we don't quit. That's not what we do. It's in your blood. no matter what it is, you follow through and you get it done and you don't quit. I talked to a woman the other day who said she's so excited for retirement because that's what she did her whole life and she stayed in that job and she didn't really want it, but you don't quit. That's normative commitment. You may find this a little bit less sort of normative in the millennial generation, who has become very accustomed to having multiple types of experiences and jobs over time. The second type is continuance commitment. Going back to the relationship analogy and being a little bit cynical about it, this is sometimes seen in marriages where it could be more of a pain to break up than to stay together. I mean, that sounds terrible, but things aren't that great, but leaving would just be really inconvenient. So essentially, it's a cost analysis, right? Would leaving cost more time, energy, resources than staying? And then finally, the effective commitment. That's what we're going for. That's what, when your company allows you to do something good, produces. It's when it becomes delightful to serve what you love. When in exchange for receiving support from their organizations, employees reciprocate with emotional dedication. That's what we want, emotional dedication. So if you read Adam Grant's stuff, he'll talk about how employees who are enabled to act pro-socially, give, volunteer, and otherwise do good, respond with increased effective commitment to their organization.
I think it's important at this point, and we're going to come back to it in an illustration, to understand that knowledge does not equal understanding. So we can know a lot about the practice of employee volunteering. And to be fair, if you looked at a company that we worked with and a company that we didn't work with, you might see a lot of the same pieces, the moving parts. You might see a global council, you might see champions on the ground, you might see training, you might see a policy or a handbook or something. A lot of these things are the same. But knowledge, or this knowledge base, is not necessarily the same thing as understanding. Understanding is the ability to apply knowledge in a specific context for a specific result. Okay? So it's applied knowledge. And what we're trying to do here is take a lot of those standard things that are a part of every company's program and tweak them just a tiny bit. So as we continue on to the rest of our time together, I want you to think about that, because what we didn't want people to do at this point is check out, okay? To say, oh, I think I've heard all this before. We are going to get to a place where we're going to turn it all around, and we'd love to see if you can see a difference in what we're talking about here.
So before we do that, let's talk about a couple practical examples. I'm going to go over these at a very high level because you can get deeper into them in the chapter, and because these are intensive topics, right? We're not going to cover all of them in 45 minutes and all the nuances that go with each one, but we do want to mention each one as a major issue and one potential solution that can go with each. You can potentially, again, implement immediately. So first one is skills-based volunteering. We'll talk about that. Second one is the global vetting of nonprofit partners. And the third one is measuring impact. We hear about these three issues on a nearly daily basis from companies everywhere. First of all, skills-based volunteering. This is a huge need for nonprofits, right? They need skilled volunteers doing real work that actually produces sustainable solutions for that nonprofit. They're resource limited. Companies need to show that volunteering connects with their core business, that it increases the knowledge and the abilities of their employees. There are some really good ways to do skills-based volunteering, and there's some really ineffective ways too. Chris?
I just put myself on mute and then off mute. So there is, as most of the folks on this phone know, because of things like $1 billion plus change or $2 billion plus change, there is an enormous amount of capacity when it comes to skill-based volunteering. If you're on the nonprofit side, you're thinking, well, that's great, but I haven't seen any of it. Okay, and there's a reason for that. And this is I want to go back to that knowledge and understanding thing. So it's a point of view. When we work with companies, we talk about companies starting with the point of view of the employee. So we implore our clients to not think about the opportunities first, but to think about the resources first, and to take responsibility for developing the resource. And the resource is the employee. So in a skill-based scenario, instead of saying, what are the needs in the community? Then looking back at the company and saying, how can I find something to plug into that need? And then going through that process, which can be difficult because you need to find the right skill. Okay, so your group shrinks. Then you have to find someone who's interested in that particular nonprofit cause. Group shrinks again. And the worst one is the person who's available, and the group shrinks again. So you probably will go through 60 skill-based people to find the one who can fit into that nonprofit. If you turned it around and you said, look, the point for us Not the nonprofit. The nonprofit is a champion of the community. That their point is the community. That's the group that they serve. But as a company, if we think the point of what we're doing is the person or the employee, then let's think through how many people do we know are volunteering. That takes some time. What skills are there? Who might be available? And then we understand our resource. Then we look at the community and say, we have this resource to bring. What is the need? And if you think about how companies operate, they produce a product for a market, right? But they have to develop that product. Obviously, they need a market as well. But we're going to our responsibility is this thing that we're producing. So this is about a social movement. If people are the point, they're not a means to an end, it turns the entire thing upside down. And we have found great success in being able to find people to fill the opportunities that are available just by changing the point of view.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk briefly about global vetting. So if you haven't received the survey from LBG Associates, just let us know. We'll send it over to you. They discovered that this is one of the most frustrating problems for corporations. How do we give and volunteer globally? How do we figure out who the 501c3 equivalents are overseas? How do we know that the government's not corrupt? If you're dealing with volunteering in China, you know it's a major issue to figure out the difference between NGOs, who is the nonprofit, who is actually controlled by the government, who do we feel comfortable with our people volunteering with, and do they even do traditional volunteering? This is a huge issue across the board. Chris, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're trying to do to remove this as a barrier for companies with global workforces is creating a process or a standard vet for all companies to adhere to, and then working with groups like TechSoup Global to do the vetting, but then to create a registry of organizations that any company can go to. So instead of 50 companies paying money to vet the single organization in India, the India organization will be vetted, and then these companies can look at that. Now, there are versions of this already in place, but not for volunteering. Not the way we're talking about it. So if you'd like to learn more about that, we've just done a tour through the U.S. and had about 70 companies speak into this, and TechSoup Global, as well as Microsoft, as well as Boeing, are coming on as in the lead role to make this happen. So if you'd like more information about that, just contact us afterwards. We can let you know.
That's a really good one. The first one is some of our advice and what we've seen work, but this one isn't. I mean, that was an actual solution too, but this is an actual solution that companies are working together on. Very exciting. The next one, the one that I find very exciting, measuring impact. Finally, people are not reporting only numbers. They're not saying we had 10 million participants and therefore we're great. We gave away 10 million shoes and that made a difference in the community. How do you know? How do you know that crime rates didn't increase because you gave those shoes away? If you've heard any of my workshops before, you've heard me say that before. It's a major frustration for me. I want to know what actually happened with that. Chris, how are we going to do that?
Well, first of all, you want to understand how crime rate goes up because there are free shoes in your community. That's a very intriguing topic. If you have not heard about Impact 2030 before now, you will. It is going to be featured at the Points of Light conference coming up in the fall, as well as we're discussing it with the Chamber of Commerce, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Impact 2030 is a private-led, the first time ever, a private-led sector initiative in conjunction with the UN and a number of other multilateral groups to promote the practice of corporate volunteering around the world to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And if you're wondering what are the Sustainable Development Goals, you will know all about that in September. These goals are replacing the Millennial Development Goals, and there's going to be a huge push, I mean enormous globally, to promote them. And Impact 2030 is not a UN initiative, but UN is a partner in it to promote corporate volunteering. So what we want to do is see that individual employee in communities where they live and work have everything they need, all the partners, all the resources, all the insight, all the connections to make a difference on behalf of their company and communities where they live and work. So if you want more information about that, you can just go to impact2030.com, or we can provide some follow-up as well for that. A big part of that is going to be measuring the impact. We're going to have, for the first time ever, a global snapshot of what is the global capacity when it comes to corporate volunteering. It's never been done before. We're going to create a baseline, and then every year all of our partners are going to contribute to understanding how are we moving the needle on, say, poverty through corporate volunteering, and we'll be measuring that for 15 years to 2030.
Perfect. So these are all things that you can begin to bring into your programs on a gradual basis, but starting tomorrow. But we'd like to give you something that you can implement immediately, and it will seem relatively common sense once you hear it. But strangely, we don't see programs implemented with this in consideration. The difference between transactional and transformative volunteering. So we're going to give you a little bit of an illustration, and please jump in the chat box with any questions or clarifications that you need.
Yeah, using the chat box is a big win for us because it shows engagement. It's an indicator. So I want you to imagine with me that I am working at Company X, and I've worked there for quite a few years, and down the hall from me is a good friend. His name is Bill. And Bill is a employee or volunteer champion. He has been for quite some time. He has volunteered for 20 years. He participates in the company program, and he's talking about it all the time. And every time he comes to me, he has an invitation. Hey, Chris, we're going to go build a habitat house. Hey, Chris, we're going to go do this. Hey, Chris. And every time he comes to me, for the last 14 times, I've had a good excuse why I can't do it. And I don't know what happened this past week, but this last time when he asked me, I didn't have a good excuse. Maybe I didn't have my coffee. He caught me off guard. I was thinking about something else, but I blurted out, okay, I'll go. And I regretted it as soon as I said it, right? Bill's jubilant. He said, okay, I'll send you an email with all the details. It's 2 Saturdays from now. We're going to go, I think he said paint, and I think he said something with youth. I don't know. I don't remember. But I do know I'm going to forget. So I make a note for myself in my iPhone. Make a note, okay, I got to do this thing. And I remind myself on the Friday to set the alarm for the Saturday. I have the email. It comes. I glance at it. I don't remember anything. And 2 weeks from now, on a Friday, my alarm goes off. And I think, what in the world? Oh, that thing with Bill I got to go do. So I set my alarm for the next day, and I get up the next day, and I'm a bit grumpy and resentful that I have to go because it's a Saturday and I've got a lot of other things to do. But I promised Bill that I would be there, so I decide I'm going to do it. I get in the car, and I'm on my way there, and I'm really tired. So I think I'll go by Starbucks, and I'll get a coffee. I get to Starbucks, and there's a line. But there's, as you all know, always a line at Starbucks. I get my coffee, but now I'm going to be late. I pull up, I find a parking spot, I'm 15 minutes late, I knock on the door and I said, hi, I'm here for the event. And I know I'm in the right place because a guy I do not know answers the door, but he has a t-shirt on for the company. So I think, okay, I got that right. Is Bill here? Yeah, sure, come on in. Bill comes from the back, and Bill says, hey, glad to see you. I said, great, yeah, glad I could be here. I'm not really. And Bill says, well, here's your t-shirt. Okay, cool. So I take the t-shirt. For some reason, the t-shirt makes me happy. I don't know why these things make me happy, but I take the t-shirt, I hand him the coffee, put on the t-shirt, he gives me the coffee back, and I said, what do you want me to do? He says, well, we're going to be painting all the trim in this place, so if you could tape off the stairs so we could paint the trim on the stairs and not get paint on the stairs, the carpet, that'd be fantastic. No problem. I tape it all off, and 20 minutes later, I go to Bill, and I say, hey, Bill, what else do you want me to do? Bill says, well, we're washing the windows, too, on the inside, so if you don't mind washing the windows, those 2 folks over there, they'll set you up. I go over there, I meet the 2 ladies washing the windows, and I do that, and this goes on for a few hours. I'm there from 9, and about 11:30, I'm looking at my watch thinking, you know what, I got to get to that lunch that I have scheduled with my friends. I'm supposed to stay to 12, but Bill won't mind. I go to Bill, and I say, hey, I got to leave a little bit early, and Bill says, hey, no problem, thanks so much for coming. What should I do before I go? He says, wash your paintbrushes, so I do that. Shake hands, keep the t-shirt. Very cool. So I keep the t-shirt, I take it off, of course, and I go and I have lunch with my friends. And that is a typical corporate volunteering experience. There's nothing wrong with that. It was good. I went, I did something, I gave of my time, I feel pretty good about it, and I get on with the rest of my day. When we talk about corporate volunteering, that is not what we're interested in. It's good. I don't mean to defame that at all. It is good, but it's not good enough. That's transactional volunteering. There's this, I go, I give my time, I feel good, and we're done. We're after something more. We're after transformative volunteering. Okay? So let me tell you the same story again and slightly different. So I work at this company. I've worked there for quite some time. I have a friend named Bill, and Bill has been doing volunteering forever, and he always asked me to go do something, and for 14 times I've always had an excuse why I couldn't go. But this time when he walks up, he catches me off guard, or I didn't have a coffee, or I was tired, but I blurt out yes, and I resent it immediately. Bill promises to send me an email, and I know I'm going to forget, so I make a note on my phone to remind myself on the Friday. And I look at the email when it comes in. I don't remember anything, something about paint and youth. And then, sure enough, 2 weeks later, when my alarm goes off, I think, what's going on? Oh, I got to go do this thing with Bill. So I set my alarm for the next morning. I get up. I'm stumbling out of bed. I'm tired. I'm still resenting having to go. I mean, I know it's a good thing, but still, I get in the car and I'm on my way there, and I think I should go by Starbucks because I'm tired and I got to get, wake myself up. And I get to Starbucks and there's a line, but there's always a line, as you all know, at Starbucks. So I stand in line and get my coffee, but now I'm 15 minutes late. I find my parking spot. I walk up to the stairs and I knock on the door. A guy I do not know answers the door. I ask for Bill. He says, sure, come on in. And I know I'm in the right place because he's wearing the company logo on his shirt. Bill comes from the back. He hands me a T-shirt. Makes me happy to get a T-shirt. I hand him my coffee. I put on the T-shirt. I say, Bill, what can I do? Bill says, listen, do you mind taping the stairs off? We're going to be painting the trim in this house, and we don't want to get any paint on the stairs. So if you can do that, that'd be great. Sure. Thanks, Bill. I'll do that. And then Bill grabs my arm and he says, hey, by the way, in 20 minutes, we're going to go into the kitchen. We're going to do a brief. So wherever you're at, just put it down and join us in there in 20 minutes. Sure. Okay. Whatever. That sounds good. So I'm taping, and 20 minutes later, I go into the kitchen. We're all standing in the kitchen. There's 15 of us. We all go around, and the first thing Bill says is, listen, I want to thank everybody for being here today. I know you had a lot of other things that you need to get done, but you took 3 hours out of your day to make this contribution. I can't tell you how important that is, so thank you. I would like to go around and just have everybody give their name and where they work in the company, because I don't think most of us know each other. I'm going to tell you some rules, what we're doing and what we're not doing, hand out some work. And then I'm going to get Felix over here to talk about, ironically, Phoenix House. His name is Felix. He works at Phoenix House. It's a youth program, and he's going to explain a little bit about it. Sure. So we go around, say our names, where we work, and I only knew one other person there, so that was helpful. And then we get the rules, don't do this, we need to do this, and here's what everybody's doing. And then he says, Felix, would you tell us a little bit about why what we're doing today matters? Felix says, listen, I want to add my thanks to Bill. Is so glad you're here. I know you do have a lot of other things you need to get done, but let me tell you why these 3 hours matter. Phoenix House is a transition house for youth who live on the street. We have an overnight facility downtown, and we have kids come through there, youth between the ages of anywhere from 14 all the way up to 29 who come through there. And we deal with that. But every once in a while, there are youth who are sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they want to get off the street. And it is a rigorous program, so not many qualify. But if you do the work, you can end up in a house like this. And there are 3 youth in this house and 1 adult. And we teach these youth how to get a job, how to write a resume, how to speak to a manager, how to show up on time, how to not leave early, why stealing's bad. A lot of basic things, how to dress for an appointment, how to dress for your job, how to keep an appointment. A lot of things that I think everybody here might take for granted. But when you don't grow up with parental figures in your life and nobody teaches you this stuff, and you don't go to school and you're not in communities where this is normal behavior, you don't automatically know it when you're born. You have to learn it. So on top of that, they have to get their GED and a number of other things. They have to learn financial literacy, all of that kind of stuff. So they're very, very busy, and they have to work on this house. They do the dishes, they do the laundry, they keep the rooms clean, they make their beds every day. But as you know, houses have a lot of extra work and things get away from you. So we bring volunteers on a regular basis to do things like you're going to do today, which is paint the trim and wash some windows, or even, repair some things like the back porch. And we do that because the biggest barrier these kids have to future success in their lives is the ability to believe that they're worth it. See, these kids don't have a sense of dignity. None. And in fact, when they get close to success, whatever small steps that may be, they often pull the pin and blow it all up because they're sure they're going to fail anyways. And what's more, they know they don't deserve it. Life has taught them for years that they deserve nothing, that they're trash, and they live with a lot of shame. We bring this place and they have to look after it, but we also make it as nice as we can because we want to tell them something very clearly. You have value, you have dignity. You deserve dignity. And so when we paint the trim and keep it up like this, that's what we're telling these kids. You have dignity. You have value. And everybody here in this room, all 15 of you, you may never meet these kids. They're all out working today. You may never meet them, but I want you to know that with each paintbrush, stroke of the brush that you put on with this clean coat of white paint, that you were telling these kids, and they don't hear it anywhere else, you matter, you have value, you have dignity. And we hope that they can believe it, but we're so grateful that you're willing to come here and be a part of that narrative, that story in their life, something different than they hear most other places for most of their life. I cannot tell you how grateful we are. Thank you for being here. And we all disperse, and now I'm painting, and I'm painting a little bit differently than I would have before. And I'm wondering what it means to put paint on and convey dignity to a youth. And I wash some windows, and I do some other things, and at the very end, they bring us back to the kitchen again, and we're going to do a debrief. Again, they thank us for our time. They're very appreciative. That's cool, but they asked us 2 questions. What did you experience? Was it what you expected? What did you experience, and was it what I expected? I'm thinking about this, and nobody really answers first off, and then Susie says something like, well, I didn't really ever think about dignity and paint going together, so that's new for me. Somebody else is thinking, I didn't think about, learning basics like not yelling at your manager when he says something you don't like, but I guess if I hadn't been taught that by my parents, I might do that too. Only 4 people shared, but we're all thinking about it, and when I drive away and I go to lunch later that day, guess what I talk about? I'm going through a process called Sensemaking, where what I just experienced has created in me something called cognitive dissonance. The model of the world that I have is now being affected by the experience, and I'm trying to bring meaning to that experience, and the debrief has forced me into a dialogue internally and externally. So when I go home and I talk to my spouse and my kids, guess what I talk about? Because I'm trying to understand, I'm trying to bring meaning to this experience. And when I see Bill next week in the hallway, I stop him and I say, listen, Bill, I don't have a ton of time, but if you've got an opportunity 3 or 4 weeks from now, let me know about it. I might be able to go. Why? I went first out of obligation in my relationship, but now there's something there that I got out of it, and there's meaningful discovery happening in my life, and I want to go back and see what else it could happen. In Transformative Volunteering, the second version, where there's critical reflection at the end, where you talk about the why at the beginning, where we create space for people to have an experience, and we walk them through a process of trying to bring meaning to that experience, that takes us from transactional to transformative. And it's the distance between transactional and transformative on paper can seem like nothing, but it is fundamental to broad changes. If we ever hope that the people we involve in these programs change their attitudes and behaviors and affect their people around them, their family, their friends, and the generations to come after them, we have to go beyond transactional to transformative. Transactional volunteering, the point is the work. Transformative volunteering, the point is the person. Because if we can inculcate a different way of seeing the world, to understand, to be passionate about communities or causes or visions, to own that and to take responsibility in it, it changes the way they vote, it changes the way they buy, it changes the way they conduct themselves. It is foundational to creating a different tomorrow.
The way Chris just told that story is the way all of us in this field have got to learn to own our own stories. The reason he can tell it like that is because he's had an experience that changed knowledge to understanding. So everything we've learned in this webinar, everything we learned in the VolunteerMatch book is going to be enormously valuable in terms of knowledge. And what we need to do is turn that into experience. We are all part of a very high calling. When we take employees and we give them the opportunity to volunteer, we of course make a meaningful difference in our communities. But we would suggest that it's even more important to make a difference in those employees, to offer them the opportunity to be changed by that experience. They begin to make better decisions and have greater empathy and become better people by going and being with people and issues that are left in the margins of society. That's what we want to do here. That's what we're all doing together in our work. When we can adjust from having a knowledge about the work to fully understanding it and having it be part of our souls, we can communicate it in a way that will change the lives of individuals. We're so grateful to be part of this with you. We want to offer space for more Q&A in the chat box, and then we can go ahead and hand it back to our organizers.
Thanks, guys. That was great. So we have a couple more minutes left for Q&A. We have a lot of great questions rolling in, and I am going to pass it off to Lauren. If there are any other questions that want to come in, of course, keep asking them in the chat box, or you can tweet us at #VMBPN.
Awesome. Okay, so first question that came in earlier in the webinar, and this is kind of a pointed question, but I think this is the challenge a lot of people might run into when trying to get internal buy-in. So how do you deal with maybe senior leadership who aren't really interested in seeing the research that you all were talking about today, and in how, you know, employee volunteering programs and really getting your employees out and engaged and, you know, involved in this transformational work can benefit not just them but the company? How can you, I guess, kind of help to get them on board when they're thinking that the employees don't really want it?
Yeah, I think there are two things that we're doing externally. One of the reasons data is not that impressive is because it's not that impressive right now. The kind of data, the quality of the data, self-reporting. Do you feel you have more skills? Yeah, I feel I have more skills. Honestly, the employee probably said that. It could be to some extent true, but they liked the volunteering experience and they know the right answer is yes. Like us as little kids, you know, did you like blah, blah, blah? Yeah, if it means I can do it again, I'll say yes. Whatever it takes, I will, yes, I did, yes. Okay, that's kind of what's going on. I think senior leadership is responding to that. So we're trying to get some qualitative data that supersedes what's happening before, along the lines of the corporate executive board. So we are pulling together a project with academia from Harvard, the Gates Foundation, as well as B. Bacalandro. If you've been on these webinars before, you know she's a superstar of measurement. And we're looking at Canada, and we'll be working across the United States on some specific sets of data. I mean, really unbreakable data, the stuff that's not been done before. The other thing that we're doing is, with Impact 2030, we're trying to create, raise the level of conversation. You know, there was a day when this whole sustainability conversation was poo-pooed as well by the senior executives, like sustainability, green, who cares? Don't be such a tree-hugging hippie, right? But now, the risk that's associated with not doing that right it's a paramount issue or topic of conversation. And we feel like through the project Impact 2030, we can raise the conversation to take a different role than just, you know, on the same level of casual Fridays or nice to do, which tends to be where it's talked about. So those are two external things. Internally, you need to know this is an issue that we struggle with, and the best way that we approach it is to find managers who volunteer and give them an opportunity to talk to those who don't. And they talk about two things. One, why they thought to do it, how it matters to them. This is a bit of a personal story. But how it makes their teams better. Because when it comes down to it, that's what managers are responsible for, that profit model. And Bebop Calandra, we're working with her on that. That is a focus of a lot of her work as well, as job purposing. So you can expect to see more about that. But yeah, giving managers the reasons why, the business reasons why their teams that volunteer, share more knowledge, stay late after work so that they can help each other be successful, know more, have more. There's a whole list of things, but then the data to back it up, coming from a peer, another manager, is the best way that we know to do it. Toyota's had good success in one of their divisions through this approach.
Awesome, thank you. So the next one's kind of on a similar line of what you were just talking about, but do you have any suggestions on ways to really maximize the passion of those already really engaged employees, so the people who are experiencing the transformation? How can you really kind of maximize that and use that to engage other employees in your company?
It's a perfect question. I didn't want to overtalk Angela though. So, because she's on mute, I'll jump in. She's looking for the mute button. That's where we start. When we start a program, say with Apple, what we did was, and they were starting from scratch. That hardly ever happens for us. We don't usually start programs from scratch. We go out and we find what we call stage 2 and stage 3 people. If you Google stages and Realize Worth, you'll see a couple articles that we've written on this. Stage 2 and stage 3 people, these are people who have been volunteering for years. They're very invested. They're very involved. We try and find people with the established enthusiasm, experience, and energy, okay? Expertise, rather, to lead this program. So we cherry pick among people who are already doing it. Typically, the company only knows about a handful of them, so we're very good at going through and finding other ones. But once you get that going and you only build your program with people who have experience, energy, and enthusiasm, not people who are A, available, okay, or two, the regional manager knows their name. Those are the worst people. Those are bottlenecks. If they don't volunteer, if you've got someone in place who has not volunteered in the past 2 months, you need to move them out of a leadership role. It doesn't matter how much enthusiasm they have. They are not practicing in their life. So this is who you build the program on. So to the question, how do you take advantage of that? Find them, elevate them to a leadership role, give them monthly support, calls, whatever, and let them lead the program. And we've seen amazing success at Apple. We started with a dozen people, and it's blown up. That we're finding 10 to 20 stage 2 and stage 3 people on a weekly basis now. So it's huge.
Great, thank you so much, Chris. So we are about out of time for our Best Practice Network session today. I want to thank everyone for joining and for all the thoughtful questions. We actually have a lot of questions that are unanswered, and we will definitely try our best to get them answered. We will give them to Angela and Chris and possibly write a blog post. So if your question was not answered, don't worry, we will get you a good answer for you. So hold tight. Okay, so find content like today's topic and more in our new book. Angela and Chris are just 2 of 35 experts in this book, so there's definitely a lot of good content in here, and it's definitely tells you, what's the future in volunteer engagement. So that is our shameless plug. And we've also partnered with Energize Inc. So if you do want to purchase the book, they are offering 25% off. So go ahead and click that bit.ly to purchase. And then other than that, if you do want to stay up to date with upcoming events, news, and trends, we encourage you to visit the VolunteerMatch Solutions blog, volunteeringiscsr.org, and then also follow us on Twitter. And of course, last but not least, we do want to thank you, our presenters, Angela and Chris, for joining us on the session, and everyone in the audience for listening. This has been super helpful, and we're so glad you all could make it. And definitely feel free to contact Angela or Chris or visit their Real Lives Worth website to learn more about them. Yeah, this has been great. Thank you, everyone, and see you all next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.